Good morning, everyone. A particular good morning to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Sir, allow me to say Anthony Kamuna, as opposed to your whole long name, because in my experience, when my mother said Lovell Michael Francis, I was going to get buff. So we'll stick to the shortened version to avoid any of that. Good morning, Professor Clement Ember. Thank you for telling the entire audience I'm coming to wing a speech this morning. I'm sure they are happier for knowing that. Good morning, Judge Lucky. Good morning to all the other judges. Good morning, Commander, and your officers who are here. Good morning, Madam PS. Good morning to faculty, staff, representatives of my ministry, Ms. Sherlon, good morning. Good morning to students, good morning to the media, good morning again to everyone. Since I am supposed to wing, I might as well start winging from the beginning. But Professor Ember should know by now that I am a contrarian, and I never do what I say or said I was going to do. So he's expecting me to make a ministerial speech, a very short one, because enhancing ocean governance is a national issue, a regional issue, an international issue, a global issue. And I could speak to that very easily from the ministerial level, but I will not. Why? This morning, to come to this symposium, I had to drive all the way from Muruga to Chagaramas. It took me 3.5 hours to get here. And I think half of my brain is still somewhere on the Raya Butler Highway, making its way here very slowly. But that's instructive and important for a number of reasons. One, Muruga is a maritime community. I don't know if any of you are aware, I spent all of last week fighting floods in my community, because when you have a very flat geographic locale and there is exorbitant amounts of rainfall and the tides are in, the water has nowhere to go, and you end up fighting floods for a very long time. Why? Because when you live in a maritime community like I can't say did because I still do, I still live there, the sea influences everything. So I could talk about the importance of enhancing ocean governance as an abstract idea, but if I take off my ministerial hat and take off my MP's hat and put on my person from Muruga's hat, this is something I live every day. Not so long ago, I used to be a primary school teacher, and my primary school was located perhaps 300 meters from the ocean shore. From my classroom, I could literally look at the waves moving. I was that close to the sea. And when you live in a community that is on the coastline, everything is affected by the sea. The entire rhythms of the community, the way, the language people use, their daily endeavors are determined almost by the tides. And then their abilities to live a good life or to not live a good life are also affected by the sea. So that when I started teaching, when I left secondary school, I could stand in the doorway of my classroom and look, and I could see fishermen fishing very close to the shore. And if I was so inclined to go and find myself a fish, get myself a fish at lunchtime or after school, I could walk the 200 meters to the shore and I could buy a fish, and it was relatively cheap because the fishermen fished very close to shore. They caught large amounts of fish. Sometimes a catch would be 2,000 pounds. They paid very little in terms of expenditure and paying for gas. It was very lucrative for them, and the price of fish was low. That has changed. The fishermen are now, in my community, are now required to travel hundreds of miles. They are required to spend hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, on gas. And then a catch, which was a certainty, in the hundreds of pounds or thousands of pounds is no longer certain. So it's very possible that a fisherman today from Moruga, from Grand Tremere, from Larafin, could travel 200 miles, spend $800 on gas, stay out for an entire day, and then come back with nothing to show for it. And that's why the price of fish in my community is high. And that's why the price of fish in my nation is high, because Moruga is the premier fishing community in this nation. We live in my community every day the impact of what happens when we perhaps don't think as acutely about governing the oceans. There were areas that I would visit in my community that were headlands, large headlands out into the ocean, out into the sea, that are now stacks, because the erosion of the coastline is startling. So that a very famous church that would have been maybe 50 meters from the ocean shore is now virtually on the ocean shore. And I'm pretty sure that before I die, that church will be a memory. And then my very prosaic community, where the greatest crime was maybe stealing a yard fowl, that was a big deal, now faces the specter of contraband and human trafficking and other issues that affect crime and criminality in this country. So it's very easy for me to come and talk about this issue as something abstract, something big, something large. But in a fundamental sense, everything is local. And all meaning to some extent is local. And the meaning of this for me, not just as a minister, not just as an MP, but as a person who lives in a rural coastal community, the meaning for me is still local. Because it affects me. It affects my friends who are still fishermen. It affects the children whose futures will be determined by the policies we make or don't make. It's tremendously important for everyone. So I want to commend Professor Imber, Professor Nairang Singh. I want to commend the UTT, not only for focusing on maritime studies at a time when once again we are wringing our hands and discussing this gigantic issue of diversification, but for understanding how pivotal this is, not just as an academic issue, but as one that affects the common man and the common woman. And regardless of whatever snazzy suit I wear, or whatever post I hold, I will always be a person from Moruga, from a rural community, from a coastal community who understands in my heart how very important a life next to the ocean is. Thank you.